But Jesus shows us the way through betrayal. God can take things that are broken. God can take things that are painful and turn them into good. God can take things that have grief and turn them into joy. It's the one thing that God can do that we can't, and that's turn bad into good. So if Judas had not betrayed Jesus in the way that he did, there would have been an armed revolt when the Roman guard came to arrest Jesus. Or there would have been a civil war within the Jewish nation for those who believed in Jesus and those who didn't. Or Jesus would have died an old man off in the desert, and many of his disciples would have left to find the next great preacher. The way the betrayal happened is that none of Jesus' followers could be involved in a war, and he died in order so that we may live. But remember that Jesus' death was started by this betrayal. And in it, I think Jesus shows us how to respond to being betrayed. First and foremost, we cannot hide it. We cannot deny it. We have to talk about our betrayal. It was evening. Jesus sat down with his disciples, and while they're eating, he said, "One of you will betray me. You have to make it public." And he did. Step number 2 is you cannot isolate yourself. You want to. You want to never make friends again. You never want to have another wife or husband. You'll want to isolate yourself, but you cannot. In order to get through betrayal, he gathered his friends together, took bread and broke it and shared it. Jesus opened himself up to his friends. And lastly, Jesus shows us how to work through betrayal by focusing on the future. Never again will I drink wine until I drink with you all in heaven. It's this forward thinking. Okay, so he brings up his denial. He mentions it. He doesn't hide it. He tells everyone he's going to be betrayed. He then gathers himself and his friends together. He gathers people around him. And number 3 is he focuses on the future. That's how we're to move through betrayal. And that's how God, working in us, can create something beautiful out of betrayal. Do you want to hear about Andy? Do you want to hear how it turns out? Okay. Because that was a really good place to end the sermon. Andy did not isolate himself. He was already considering suicide before Katrina showed up on his doorstep. But he did not isolate himself. He went and sought a counselor. Actually, a good friend of his said, "You need to see a counselor. If you're thinking about killing yourself, you just found out your wife betrayed you. Your dead wife betrayed you." So he went and saw a counselor. And he started gathering his friends together, the ones that, the dealership that he owned, his friends that were salesmen. They started going to various Buick things. They started doing stuff together. He had isolated himself when Susie died. And this betrayal was forcing him to open himself up and to start talking. And most importantly, he started talking to Katrina. He started talking to her. Katrina's story is an interesting one. Her mother, obviously adopted. Her parents passed away. And then she passed away about a month before she went looking for her grandmother. Katrina was alone in this world. She had no family around, and she was reaching out for her grandmother. Andy, too, was alone in the world and didn't know that he needed a granddaughter, but he got one. So they started communicating. They started developing a relationship, and a deep bond relationship that happens between grandfather and granddaughter. Within 2 years, she was pregnant. She gave birth. And he became a great-grandfather, and her kids knew nothing of the difference. He was just great-grandfather Andy. And his life became full and enriched. His friendships that he had made continued. He continued in his relationship with Katrina. She moved into the town to be around him, to have family support. And he finally had the grandchildren that he had always wanted. He felt a repairing and a bringing together of his life. And for the last 5 years that he had been living, he had family around him. And Andy told us clergy, when he told us the story, If Susie had told him when he returned from San Francisco that she had had a child out of wedlock, he would have broken their relationship and never had anything to do with her. The grief that he felt of why didn't she trust me to share with me that she had a child, that grief turned into understanding of why. At some point in the relationship, if she had said, I had had a child before I met you, it would have broken their relationship. If he had found out before she died about Katrina, and if Katrina had found about him before Susie died, they never would have had the relationship that they have. He wouldn't have accepted her as a granddaughter, and he would have rejected her. It is through this betrayal that God was able to patch Andy's life back together again and knit it closely with a woman who he never met, with Katrina. And God took what was broken and made new life out of it that continues to this day. And Jesus took bread and broke it and shared it with everyone, including Judas, and said, this is my body broken for you. By doing that, he instituted one of the greatest sacraments that we have, besides baptism. We have the ability to come together and to remember Jesus, and to remember that although we are broken inside, that God heals, and that Jesus broke himself open for us. We do this, and as Paul mentioned in our reading this morning, because, or although we are many different people, we are one body, because we share in the one bread and the one cup. Today, the Anglican Church of the Resurrection here in San Marcos, as I speak, will be celebrating communion just like us. They will be breaking bread and saying Jesus broke his bread, broke this bread to share with all. They will be doing the same act that we are doing. And though we are many, though we are different, we are one body. And someday, through the love of Jesus, the broken fragments of us will be gathered together, and in one holy communion, that day we will sit with Jesus in his kingdom, and we will drink wine with him, one body healed and restored.